Dog. Nice to have you with us on a busy afternoon as we kick off a broadcast day here on a great SiriusXM 82 on Mad Dog Unleashed. Yes, Christopher Russo with Eddie Erickson and Colin Schmelling as we talked about what's going on as far as the world of sports is concerned on our Tuesday on the 16th day of January 2018. 888 Mad Dog 6 as we get right to it here and get to what is going on as far as the world of sports is concerned. I'll do a little baseball a little later on, a couple of moves with the Pirates, San Francisco. We'll get into that a little bit. We didn't touch on that yesterday as the thawing is trying to break through here as far as the offseason is concerned in Major League Baseball with all the free agents. Lots of guys still to be signed. We'll get to that in the course for our day two as we take off and try to land this plane on a busy day as we chat to you about what's cooking here in the world of sports. I know Steve did this, so I'll go there as well with the Steelers. And, you know, I mean, Tomlin is a very, very tricky guy to examine if you are a NFL fan right now. He is a it's tricky. I mean, he's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl. He has, basically been relatively consistent in his career there in Pittsburgh, where they have been, for the most part, let me get my little book. They have been, for the most part, they have been a pretty respectable team. They have been, they've been to 2 Super Bowls. They've had a lot of scenarios where they've been in the postseason. Now, he's lost 5 of his last 7 playoff games, so you don't like that. But overall, the Tomlin record in Pittsburgh, if you look at it on a year-to-year basis, it's pretty good. And if you're a football fan of any ilk, you would take, if you were around 111-63. What are they this year? They're about 13-3. So I think they were 13-3. Maybe they were 12-4, but I think they were 13-3. So he is 124-66. I mean, that's 50-something games over 500 in his career, which is a very, very good record. He get hired tomorrow if they made a change, and he got there in 2007. And if you go look at the years of Tomlin when he arrived in Pittsburgh from 2007, he was 10-6 right away. He has first 2 years he was 12-4 and he won it all. And then in 2009 they were 9-7, had an off year off that championship. 2010 they went right back to the Super Bowl. So he's there 1, 2, 3, 4. He's there in his first 4 years. He goes to 2 Super Bowls. I mean, first 4 years, he goes to 2 Super Bowls. And then from 2011 onward, I mean, he's been spotty. 12-4, lost opening round of the playoffs. That was in 2011. 2012, 8-8. 2013, 8-8. So that's, average years. 2014, 11-5. Again, he lost first round of the playoffs. That year, Baltimore beat him. 2015, they were 10-6. They were a wild card team. They beat Cincinnati to get out of the first round, and they lost at Denver by a touchdown. But they went into that game, depleted because they had no one Antonio Brown because he got knocked out the week before, if you remember correctly, by Burfict. And then, of course, last year he won 2 playoff games before he lost to New England. Then he lost this year, opening round here in a game that they should have won against Jacksonville. So from 2000, when you get right down to it, after the first 4 years, and that's 2010, from 2011, that's how many years is that? 3, 5, 7 years, correct? Correct. Last 7 years, he's won 3 playoff games. So how do you evaluate Tomlin? It's a very, very tricky call. It's a system in Pittsburgh. He doesn't pick the players. They have a personnel department that does that. He does not pick them. It's like the Giants. The Rooneys and the Maras are very similar. The coach does not pick the player. No, listen, he's in the room. So, I mean, if he's vehemently against somebody, I mean, they're going to listen to what he wants to, what he wants to do. Don't get me wrong. But he does not have final say. The final say in those 2 scenarios. Now, Belichick's got the final say in New England. I mean, we know that. But in those 2 markets, with those 2 franchises, the head coach does not have final say on player acquisition. That's all there is to it. He does not. So Tomlin, they've got a lot of good players in Pittsburgh. They've had a very good system. So he is not responsible. His job is to coach him. His job is not to pick him. So, that is a great system. They haven't had many coaches. Remember, they've had 3 coaches since 1969. That's it. I mean, they had Noel, they had Cowher, and they've had him. That's it. That's pretty good. I mean, they've had 3 coaches in literally 47 years. I mean, think about that for a minute. And, they don't fire coaches just because they feel like firing a coach. This is not the Tennessee Titans. This is, they go out there and, you really have to implode for them to give up on you. This is, they keep the coach around come hell or high water. So you got to keep that in mind when you want to evaluate Pittsburgh. And if you are a Pittsburgh fan right now, that is frustrated, and rightfully so. I mean, the team did an horrendous job, in last week in getting ready for this Jacksonville game. They were not prepared properly. They were moaning, they were tweeting, and they were chirping about getting ready to play the Patriots. They took the Jaguars for granted. We all know that. The Jaguars took that to heart. They had lost the Jaguars badly in week 5, and so the whole world thought they would get back at Jacksonville in their building and bury them. Nobody was that impressed by Jacksonville against Buffalo anyway, and I'm sure Pittsburgh watched that game, and you couldn't be impressed with Jacksonville if you were. That may have been the worst thing that happened to Pittsburgh is the fact that they happened to watch probably the Buffalo game, and Jacksonville was not impressive against the Bills on any level. And if you're a Pittsburgh, you say, geez, this is the team we're going to play now? Jacksonville? How did we lose to them the first time? So as a result, Pittsburgh went into that Jacksonville game Sunday very overconfident, again chirping, which got under the skin of the Jaguars, and then they came out unprepared, ill-prepared, flat as a pancake, got destroyed early in the game, and, to their credit, they didn't quit. They came back 28-7, 28-21, had the ball with a chance to tie. I mean, so they did what they did to get back in the game, but the damage was done. So that's the first negative on Tomlin. Then you throw in the game management scenario in this game where, I don't have as big a problem with it as everybody else does, but the 2 4th down plays, obviously the whole scenario with the onside kick, I mean, it wasn't pretty by any stretch of the imagination. So Pittsburgh had a rough week. They have not had a lot of success since 2010. And I've said this to you before, and I'm going to say it again. And I think McCarthy's got the same scenario, too, to a certain degree in Green Bay. Now, McCarthy's had Rodgers hurt a couple of times, so that's a problem. Plus, he lost a game that he should have won on an onside kick, which, it's hard to lose a game. It's hard to kill the coach when the kid didn't make the catch on an onside kick in the Seattle NFC Championship game a couple of years ago. So you give him a little break on that. But Tomlin has only been to 1 Super Bowl since Rodgers, when he won against Pittsburgh, nevertheless, and ironically enough, when he beat Tomlin. But Tomlin with Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, great offense, has not been to a Super Bowl in 7 years. Plus the fact he can't beat New England. So that is that is hard now. He hasn't done anything since 2010. First 4 years were good. 7, 8, 9, 10. 2 Super Bowls, 1 he won. So, you can't argue first 4 years. But in the last 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, in the last 7 years, with 3 Hall of Famers, he's won all of 3 playoff games. He beat Cincinnati when they absolutely imploded. He beat the Chiefs and Andy Reid, who can't get out of their own way, and he beat Miami with Matt Moore. That's it. That is what he's done. So he's got those 3 great players, Pittsburgh, those 3, and he's won 3 playoff games. That is not impressive. The Bengals, who never win, Miami, who stunk, and, of course, the Chiefs, who he won late in the game. Throw in the idea that he's, awful against the Patriots. So what do you do with him? Now, Pittsburgh is not going to fire him. I don't care what any minority owner says in Pittsburgh. I guess a report out today saying they're going to make a change. No, they're not. The Rooneys make the call on that, not some minority owner who owns 4% of the team who's frustrated that he can't watch the championship game in his suite with the shrimp cocktail. I mean, he has absolutely no say, or she has absolutely no say. That is a Rooney call on that. Now, listen, the minority owner could make Rooney's life miserable at a shareholders meeting, but as far as the actual decision-making is concerned, no minority owner is going to tell the Rooney family what to do with the head coach. None. Zero. And I don't think they love Tomlin. I think that they are probably very disappointed. But, I would be pretty shocked if they were, that crazy to get him out of there. I would be shocked. Now, listen, I would think he's on call, though. I would think that he's going to be served notice. He can't have many more of these and survive. So, and the Steelers, again, they do not fire coaches. No quit, cower quit. They don't fire anybody. So this is an organization, they handle coaches like the Giants handle general managers. The Giants, essentially have had 4 general managers in, 35, 40 years. And outside of Jerry Reese, they don't fire GMs. I mean, George Young left. Ernie, of course, he left. And then Reese. And then, of course, they let him go this year to bring Gettleman in. They treat coaches in Pittsburgh like the Giants treat GMs in New York. So that is something that, before you call today, and I know Steve took a lot of calls on this, about let's get Tomlin out of there. And remember, I have never been a big Tomlin fan. I think he's very overrated. Never have I been a big Tomlin fan. I don't think he's a big-time coach. I just don't. And I'm not trying to say that's an easy team to coach. Roethlisberger is his own deal. You got to deal with him. Who knows what he's like behind the scenes? He used to be a disaster. He's cleaned up his act. We know that. You throw in Antonio Brown, who last year decided to take pictures of the clubhouse locker room after they beat Kansas City, which embarrassed everybody. And then, of course, you got Le'Veon Bell texting people regarding we'll see you in New England on January 18th, 19th. And then, of course, Mike Sherman and everything else. And their defense stinks. So the Pittsburgh thing right now is interesting. Listen, the Saints had a bad loss, but Peyton won a playoff game. Peyton's won a Super Bowl. He's got Breeze. They had a great draft situation. Him and Loomis are tied at the hip. There's been rumors about Peyton leaving on more than one occasion. He's always stayed there. He's got the Hall of Fame QB who's got a couple of years left at least. Peyton's going nowhere. So the Saints could live with what occurred. Quinn won a playoff game. Last year was a terrible loss to New England. He has to take a lot of responsibility for that. Their play calling late in the game was atrocious. Shanahan, of course, too, but Quinn's the head coach. But if you're Arthur Blank is not letting him go. I mean, obviously, the Falcons had they made the playoffs off a Super Bowl appearance. Not easy to make the playoffs after a Super Bowl appearance. Not easy to make the playoffs 2 years in a row, unless you're Bill Belichick. I mean, listen, Dallas didn't make the playoffs. Green Bay didn't make the playoffs. So that is not that easy, from that perspective. Seattle didn't make the playoffs, and he did, so he's okay. We all know that regardless of what happens this week, Marone's okay. With Jackson, we know Sean McVay is okay. Nothing's going to happen to him as far as the Rams are concerned. No issues there. Andy Reid probably on a griddle a little bit, but Clark Hunt is a very conservative guy. They keep coaches there a long time. They made the playoffs. They won the division. Bob Sutton might be jettisoned out of there, but as far as the Chiefs are concerned, I know Hunt's probably annoyed that they haven't won a playoff game at home in 35 years, but I would think that he made a big commitment to Reid. Reid doesn't win playoff games. He's the Marty Schottenheimer, really, of this era. But I would think that Reid is going to stay. Malarkey just lost his job. I don't think the GM wanted him there anyway. I think the GM wants to pick his coach, wants to pick the coaches. He wanted Terry Rabisky out of there. The GM, don't forget, hired 2 days after, or maybe it was 2 days before or after the interim tag was left of Malarkey. So he had nothing to do with that hire. When he became the general manager of Tennessee, Malarkey probably, felt a little full of himself after winning a playoff game. Maybe he didn't want his coaches touched. Who knows? So there are issues, personality scenarios with Tennessee, which you can certainly understand. Obviously, Peterson's not getting in trouble if they lose this week. He won a playoff game. He won the division. He did it without his quarterback the last 3 or 4 weeks. Peterson's going to get Coach of the Year votes. Nothing's going to happen to him. So, I mean, when you get right down to it, the guy right now that is a little more under the griddle than all the other postseason losers is, and Buffalo McDermott, I mean, he made the playoffs, broke a 19-year drought or 18-year drought, whatever it was. So the only guy that really is kind of, Reed's a little under the gun, but Hunt, Tomlin's a little under the gun, but the Rooneys. 18 after the hour, we continue. Mad Dog Unleashed.